Well, good evening and hello. I am so glad to be able to connect with you tonight. This is Stella Payton. I am excited to be sharing with you guys tonight in one of our online classes. Tonight we're going to be talking about future casting January in November. Future Casting 2019. Now, there's a lot of information to cover this evening, and there will be a workbook that goes with this. I'm learning more and more that it's actually easier for me to draft my ideas after I teach. So tonight we're going to be covering a lot of ground. If you've been on my website and been on my Facebook page, you'll see I've been doing a lot of talking about January and November. Now, for many years, as my own history with God would dictate, years ago I stopped doing my planning in January. I was actually praying one day, and the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, if you do everything the same time as everybody else is doing it, you begin to lose your effectiveness. It's sort of the same idea as like when you're an investor. If everybody else if the stocks are down and everybody is running from the market, then that's the best time to buy. And if the stocks are up and they're booming and everybody is running to the market, that's the time you want to get out. So tonight we're going to be doing our planning, talking about my personal strategy for doing your strategic planning for the following year, how to get that strategic planning done. Not in January, because if we wait until January, then you actually get to that month and a lot of people spend that month of January fasting. They spend that time in prayer, and what happens is by the time they get through fasting and praying and they're halfway through February. And so much of the year and your opportunity to get off to a solid racing start is already gone. So tonight we're going to be talking about future casting January in November. And we're going to be covering a couple of bases. Number one, we're going to talk about defining your goals. We're going to talk about clarifying purpose, mapping some strategies and outlining some things. We're also going to be looking at goal setting. What does that actually mean? And then a lot of people have dreams in their heart, and they don't understand how to connect the dream in your heart to the prophetic words and what God has already said. So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about the elements of strategy, and then how to create and build consistency. So tonight's topic, January and November, future casting 2019. So the first thing I want to talk about is techniques for clarifying, for creating clarity. Now, if you've been watching any of my video segments, what you will find is I've been talking about there's a process called strategic questioning that many people don't have the results that they want because they are looking for answers, and as opposed to getting answers, it's not the answers that they need. What they actually need is to start asking the right questions. For example, a typical question would be, someone would say, what are you going to do next year? So a person would answer that by saying, well, we've been talking about buying a house, and, I really need to change jobs, or I really need to find a way to increase my income, or, we've been thinking about moving to another city. So when you ask the question, what are you going to do? It challenges you to sort of explore, but it challenges you to come up with pat answers. But what it does not challenge you to do is think through or think in such a way that it creates motion from where you are to where you can potentially be. Notice I didn't say where you're going, I said where you could potentially be. So strategic questions will activate and challenge you to move in the realm of your potential, not what you can actually see. Now, when God gives us an assignment, or when he speaks a prophetic word into our life, he is not speaking to our current reality. What he is speaking to is your potential. He is talking about what your life could actually do if you were to change paradigms, moving from just a realm of what you can see in the natural to starting to explore what life would look like if you stepped into the spirit realm and began to look over the scope of your life from a divine heavenly perspective. The Word of God says that we are seated in heavenly places with Christ Jesus. That being the case, then, there is a perspective of our lives and our potential that looks over and down into it. So you can now look at your life from a higher level. So that if you're looking at a particular circumstance, you won't be able to, in the natural, we are often blinded. As the saying goes, we can't see the forest for the trees because we're so close to looking at the current circumstance. When it comes to strategy and coming up with a strategic plan to act, it is paramount that we step out of the forest, rise above it, go up to the place where you're seated in heavenly places with Christ, and then look at your life from a divine perspective, from a heavenly agenda, so that you can now start to ask, what did God think about? What was he thinking? According to Jeremiah 29:11, what was God thinking when he considered me? When he says, for I know the thoughts that I think towards you, says God, thoughts to give you a hope and a future, so that now I realize there is a perspective of my life that is far above what I can see in the natural. And my responsibility, first and foremost, before I write down a single thing, before I write down a single goal, is to go back. Number one, step one is go back and get the promises that have been decreed over your life and begin to read them again and then begin to pray into them. Because the promises and the prophecies over your life will always supersede, excel, and go far beyond what you think you can do by writing out our little goals every year. So the promises are number one. That's promises from the Word. Well, for example, a promise from the Word would say, my God shall supply all of my needs according to his riches and glory. So that if your current circumstance looking into 2019 shows and indicates any degree of lack, then that promise is designed to activate a perspective from God's divine arena into the natural. Now, it will always raise you up above what you can see. It will raise you up above your job, because your job is not your source. It will raise you up above your own potential. Your skills and abilities is not what God bases his capacity to bless you on. I know you guys, I've been studying, writing all day, so I know I'm on a roll. You're going to need to watch this a couple of times. I'm just telling you now. Okay? So you're going to rise above to get a divine perspective before you write a single goal, before you set up a single strategy. Number one, go back, look at the promises that correlate to the issues of your life right now. Okay? So look at the issues that you are finishing 2018 with, and then look at those issues in light of what God has promised you. Because to go and say, I'm just going to skip, I'm going to forget what God already told me in 2018 that hasn't manifested. I'm just going to forget that. No, baby. You fight for these last 6 weeks in 2018. You take all the ground you can occupy. If God said that you were going to end this year, I'm telling you, God did a miracle for me the other day in the courtroom. I had no idea. I knew my attorney was going to resign. I was challenged. I was like, I didn't really have the funds for a new attorney. And God, supernatural, when I stepped out of my circumstances and said, you know what, Lord, I can't do anything about that. That is your issue. You're going to have to manage that for your daughter. I know him and whom I believe, and I am persuaded that God is able to keep that which is committed unto him. That was my promise. I let go of the issue and the problem, and I stepped into the presence of God and allowed him. And supernaturally, God supplied an attorney with specialized skills in the very area that I need. Someone who is skilled with the division of assets, someone who is knowledgeable in the very areas that I need. So number one, before you write down a single goal, you need to look at your life from the scope of the prophetic words that have been decreed over you and the promises that God has already made to you. So what are the prophecies and what are the promises? Now, how do you know which prophecies and which promises to focus on? We're talking about strategies for 2019 future casting. So if you don't know which prophecies to focus on and which promises to highlight, then what you're going to do is look at the problems you are encountering at the end of 2018, and that's your starting place. Because you don't want to just skip out of 2018, go into 2019, and never having experienced victory. It is imperative that you experience victory, because it is the victories that you experience that activate your faith, turn on your energy, get you excited about going into a new year, ready to kick some. Got me? Okay. So, number one, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to evaluate life in the context of examining two components. What are the prophetic words that God has spoken, and what are the promises that God has made? So go back, take out your journals. If you don't have a prophetic word journal, create one. Then your next assignment is to get your prophetic journal, a book where you can write down all of the promises of God. You guys have seen mine. I have mine. I don't have it here on my desk, but it's upstairs by my nightstand. Get the prophetic promises and begin to read over them. You need to do that in the next 24 hours. In fact, before you go to bed tonight, you need to read the prophetic words that have been spoken over you. Number two, what are the promises that God has made to you that counteract the problems you're experiencing? That's the starting place. So we want to finish out 2018 assessing how much of what God has already told us that he was going to do for us has manifested. And then we're going to look at the promises he's made. And then we're going to address the problems. Then the next thing we're going to do, number two, is we're going to start looking at life in the context of not looking for the answer. Okay, should I move or should I stay? Should I find a better job or should I get a better job? Or should I stay at the job that I have? Should I? So those aren't bad questions, but they're not strategic questions. Now, here is the power of a strategic question. Strategic questions will activate motion so that you can move in a particular direction. Let me say that again. Strategic questions will activate motion so that you can move in a particular direction. So when you are trying to change where you are and go to another level, then it's going to be really important that there be something behind you allowing you to move forward in that direction. Now, I'm going to give you a biblical example of what I'm talking about. And these are from my notes, you guys. So by the way, for those of you who ordered the class, Renewing the 6 Faculties of Your Mind, you should check your Facebook Messenger. Your PDF workbook has already been uploaded into your Facebook Messenger. It's faster for me to upload in Messenger if I don't have to email it to everybody. If you purchase that book, it should be in your Facebook Messenger. If you don't see it in your Facebook Messenger, please message me. I will make sure. I don't think I missed anybody, but I wanted to make sure I got that out there. Okay, sidebar. Okay, so let's look at an example of a strategic question compared to a question that's what I call an everyday question, okay? An everyday question. A strategic question is one that activates motion in the direction of your potential, not in direction of where you think you're going. A strategic question opens up the scope of your life and activates motion in the directions of your enlarged potential. In other words, it allows you to see what can come out of your life that is above and beyond and over. It is in the realm of the super abundantly, far more than you can ask or think. Now, in your mind, there are certain things that you think you can do. And you say, well, if I do this, we'll be able to increase our income by $250 a month. And then with that $250 a month, we can pay off these bills. And then that's your thinking. But God wants to get you out of that. And so strategic questions will help you do it. Okay. Now here's a beautiful, now for that, like for example, the question, should I move or should I stay? So it said, well, what are you going to do? Well, we've been thinking about moving. So what you going to do? Y'all going to move or you going to stay? That's a good question, but it's not a strategic question. Here's a strategic question, what it would sound like. Based on your hunger for change, what could life look like if you moved to one of these cities? Based on your hunger for change, what could your life look like if you moved to this city? Okay. Another one about moving. how could relocating impact your life in the next 10 years? Should you stay at a job or should you leave? Let's give a couple of others. Do you see the difference between should I move or should I stay? Because strategic questions will activate movement in the direction of your enlarged potential. Somebody type that for me. Strategic questions will activate movement in the direction of your enlarged potential, so that you are not looking at life like this. You rise above your life, you look down into it because you are seated in heavenly places, and you are looking at your life through the lens of Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, says God, thoughts to give you a hope, a future, and to enlarge your expectation. So if you are just thinking about, I just want to earn an extra $200 so I can pay off this credit card, God is so much bigger than that. He's so much larger than that. He's so much more broad than that. And what he wants to do is to train us to enlarge our own thinking, enlarge our own vision, so that we can now take advantage of the promises that are related to the problems you've experienced. Because God doesn't get glory when you are doing just okay. God gets the most glory when you are walking in the realm of the super abundantly, far more than I can ask or think. Now, I can ask for my home. I can ask for my rental properties. I can think about X amount of dollars that I should walk away from my divorce with. But God is in the realm of super abundantly, far more than I can ask or think. So what would it look like if not only that I possess those things, but that I stepped into a realm of prosperity that supersedes anything I have experienced yet to date? What would I be able to do if I didn't have the limitations of a job? How much could I write? Now, you guys, I have been a writing nutcase, all day long. So now what we're going to do with strategic questions, they're going to create motion and that takes into account the expanses of your potential. Okay? Another characteristic of strategic question is strategic questions will dislodge old thought patterns. Okay? Now, let's talk about old thought patterns. An old thought pattern would be, well, you know what? We have always taken our tax return and paid off our bills. Okay? That's an old thought pattern. It'll never get you rich, and it'll never get you out of debt. Paying your bills will never get you out of debt. That is an old thought pattern, and most people think, well, if I pay these bills, I'm going to get out of debt. It doesn't work that way. To get out of debt requires a shift in your thinking, where you are not thinking about getting out of debt, where you are actually beginning to think about building and creating wealth. So that if you think, well, if we just pay these bills and those bills will be gone, then by the time you get those bills paid, some more will arise. You see? Now, a shift in old thought patterns in that example would be, and we're talking about asking strategic questions. Okay? A shift in old thought patterns in that scenario would be, how much money would I need to earn so that my money pays my debt? My money grows faster than my debt, and my money is growing and it's paying the debt off, and I don't have to work for that money. Now, that's called passive income. It is called establishing a financial base so that you have access to passive income. That's money that comes in whether I get up and go to work or not. That's money that's going to show up in my bank account, show up in my mutual fund account, show up in my investment account, whether I go to work or not. So strategic thinking, number one, will create movement in the direction of your enlarged potential. That's number one. Number two, strategic questions will dislodge old thought patterns, old ways of thinking. Well, this is the way we've always done it, so, why change? Because, if you want to get something different, you got to do something different. If you want to enlarge your finances, so that's how we have to start thinking. We have to. This is why renewing the 6 faculties of the mind was so vital, because if you don't challenge old thought patterns, then you will. If you continue to think, if we think the same way, then we will produce the same results, because we will be talking the same language that we were in that got us to where we are. Now, if we want to get to somewhere different, we'll have to change our language, and the only way language will change is if thinking changes. That is why we have to renew our minds, or change the way we think. Repenting means I have to repent of my former thinking patterns, because because the old ways of thinking are no longer viable. Okay, they're not getting me where I want to go. They're not enlarging my potential. They're not expanding my resources. So, number 1, strategic questions will create movement in the direction of your potential. Number 2, strategic questions will dislodge old thought patterns. Number 3, strategic questions will challenge your assumptions. Okay? They will challenge your assumptions. Now, what is an assumption? An assumption is to believe that things are going to be a certain way, so you assume that it's going to happen that way. So people, for example, I think I'm just going to stay at this job. So I'm not going to go to school this year. I'm just going to stay at this job. What's the assumption? Anybody want to take a stab at the assumption? What's the assumption? The assumption is that job is going to be there. That's a false assumption, because you can lose a job 24/7. The reality of the workplace is that each and every one of us who clocks into a clock has to be prepared at all times for a job change. You don't need to get your resume together when you start looking for a new job. You need to have your resume in order, so that any time someone asks you for it, you're ready to give. Why? Because your assumption is that job is going to be there, and it may not be. The assumption, for example, the call center where I work, there's a big move to unionize that call center. The assumption is that the company is going to stay there. Well, if they challenge that assumption, the contract is only 10 years. So if that contract ends in 10 years, and they're already six or 7 years into that contract. So the reality is, while you work and trying to build a union, and again, I believe in unionization when it is effective and necessary. And in this case, it is, because that company had done some hideous things in terms of paying people correctly. But the assumption is that if I fight this battle and we win, I'm going to get more pay. When in reality, you can fight that battle all day long. They can pack up and move out of the city, and you will spend a whole lot of time when you could have more effectively spent that time cultivating the necessary skills, increasing your knowledge base, and acquiring skills that the marketplace desperately and direly needs. And when you acquire the skills that the marketplace desperately and direly needs, you will never have to look for a job. The jobs will come looking for you. Okay, so strategic questions. Number 1, they create movement in the direction of your expanded potential. Number 2, strategic questions dislodge old thought patterns. Number 3, strategic questions challenge old and false assumptions. Here's number 4. Strategic questions will broaden your sense of options. Okay, now here's an example that happens a lot. Okay, a person loses their job, and then they think, oh wow, I've got to make more money because I may lose my house. Now, the person thinks, well, they're thinking one way. They're thinking, if I don't earn more money, if I don't work more hours, if I don't clock in more, if I don't come in more, I'm not going to have enough money. And yes, that can help, but your options are too narrow, because there are only so many hours that you can physically work in a day without that level of labor taking a toll on your physical well-being. I learned that working in this call center. I have a 10-hour shift now. I didn't realize the toll of working and staring at a computer for 10 hours a day and doing that 4 days a week. I didn't realize how limiting it would make my own ability to write the stuff that I really want to be writing, but I couldn't write as much because I would get home and my eyes were exhausted. So what we have to do is broaden our sense of option. So in that particular case, what I can begin to do, strategic questions will challenge me to go, okay, how else, what are some other ways that this mortgage can get paid? You've got a spare bedroom, you can do an Airbnb. You can rent a room to a college student. Okay, you can, if you have if you want to be in the advanced planning stage and you have high utility costs, if you want to, you can check into what would it take to get funding to install solar panels on my house so that I can ward off high utility costs. That there are some people who are paying $600 and $700, $800 a month for their utilities. It is the second largest expense for their home, second only to the cost of their mortgage. Well, what if you looked at that as an expanded option? What if you looked at buying a piece of property? There are all different ways that we can generate revenue. What if, instead of clocking in to that same job, what if you explored opportunities outside of that job and you did do something, but you did something entrepreneurial that created a new income stream? What if you started driving for Uber or driving for Lyft, or if you did Amazon Flex? That's an $18 to $25 an hour opportunity in the right. So if you're in the right city, they're paying you now to deliver their packages. You see that what strategic questions do is broaden our sense of options. They enlarge the way we look at the things we're contending with so that now we can have a better option. Okay, just a couple more characteristics of strategic questions, and then we're going to move on from this to our next thing. So we're talking about how strategic questions create clarity, and that the characteristics of strategic questions and what they can do for us in our planning. So that we're not just saying, what am I going to do next year? What are my goals? What am I going to, how am I going to get this accomplished? Well, so we want to move beyond that. Now, here's the next one. Strategic questions help us see the big picture. Now, I've already discussed that one in a slightly different context. I said that strategic questions raise us up over our lives, and we rise. We don't just see the trees, we rise above the trees. Why? Because we are seated in heavenly places with Christ Jesus. Now, what can connect me with the big picture is that if God has spoken something into my heart, that I can now grab from the spirit realm and draw into the earth realm. For example, one of the things that was spoken over my own life is that I'm a prophetic singer. For those of you who don't know, I sang for many years. Now, singing hasn't been at the forefront of my life in recent years because, one, I don't go to church. Two, I'm not an artist. I enjoy singing, but that's what God spoke. Now, if I want to activate movement in that direction, I need to step up out of my current situation and say, okay, well, I'm not, what did I just say? I'm not in the church. I'm not. So my assumption is that I have to be in a church to sing. My limiting beliefs or my old thought pattern is that that's the only avenue that's where I sang before. So where am I going to sing? Well, I always grew up singing in the church. So one of the things that the Spirit of God spoke to me a few days ago was that He says, when you launch the Customer Service Academy, you're going to begin to do corporate events. And as you do corporate events, you're going to sing your own music at the corporate events before you speak. Now, I had never thought of my gift being used in that arena that way. What did I just do? I created movement and energy for change. So now I can start to think, what do I need to do now to prep and prepare my voice? And so now I can start thinking, what are my options? How can I expand my options for identifying corporations to teach customer service training, and then to go in as a motivational, inspirational customer service trainer who can sing? That creates a unique, a differentiation, market differentiation. That separates me from all of the other customer service trainers. I say there's a lot of customer service trainers out there, but ain't many of them who can sing as good as I can. Now, I don't mean that in an arrogant way, you guys, and I don't mean that in a proud way. I'm just saying that that is a gift that God deposited in my life. And the Holy Spirit dropped that seed of an idea into my spirit. Now it is my responsibility to follow through. And now I can begin to write down what are some things that I think the Holy Spirit can do. I can come up with my ideas, but now we get ready to go into phase 2. So those are the power of strategic questions. Now in the workbook that I just finished renewing the 6 faculties of the mind, and I'm already on this one. I'm already getting it. I know it's good. You guys got to excuse me because I got a little heater on under here. It is burning me up. 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. I said, if I don't turn that heater off, I'm going to pass out in this chair. Okay. So anyway, so now strategic questions create clarity. They expand my options. They create movement in the direction, not of my goals, but in the direction of my enlarged potential. They incite energy. They give me energy to change. When I start thinking outside of my old patterns and I start seeing my potential from a different perspective, then I can get excited about what God is doing in my life. I can get motivated. I can be enthusiastic because I see God, who has begun a good work in me, is faithful to complete the work that he has started. So that's the power of strategic questions. Now, let's look at some of the context of the traditional perspectives of what I should be focused on. Now, there are 7 categories of goals, okay? There are 7. The first one that many people, if you're going to list them, there is the spiritual goals, there are mental goals, there are physical goals. So that encompasses the 3 dimensions: your spirit man, your soulless man, and your physical man. So your first 3 goals that are on the list for most people are going to deal with your spirit development, your mental development, and our physical development. Now, depending on what your issues are in life and where your health is and what you need to learn so that you can increase your income, increase your potential, and increase our options, that's what will help me determine which one of these needs my focus the most. Because it's not effective for me to try to focus on them all. But here's the power of focus. And it's called the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. This rule states that a 20% increase in effort in a single area will produce an 80% result and outcome. And then once I'm producing results and outcome in that one area, then those results and outcome will spill over and begin to influence the other 2. Let me break that down. Let's say, for example, if the area that I'll use myself. Working in a call center, I have put on some weight and it is not pretty. It's not pretty and it's not good, okay? So one of my personal focuses, and then in addition to the stressors that I've had, I knew that I couldn't put that much pressure. I said, I can't focus on trying to control my weight. I can't do that, writing books. I have a lot. Going through a divorce. So what I had to do was pick my focus for this year. So my focus this year was launching things, launching the Customer Service Academy, launching the Kyle Circle, launching, I've written 3 books this year. 3, wow. 3 studies. I've done 3 complete Bible studies this year. And so that was my focus. Now, I did that because I needed an outlet for creative energy so that I could counteract all of the negative energy I was experiencing as I was going through my personal life challenges. But now, as I'm looking at my spiritual growth, my mental growth, my physical growth, my physical body has to come to the forefront in 2019. I know that. So now I have to do what? I have to decide, how am I going to not attack, that's not a good word. How am I going to address my eating habits? How am I going to acknowledge what I need to do? Well, one of the first things God did was reduce my schedule so that I'm not working 5 days a week. I'm now working 4 days a week, which is good because when open enrollment ends and we can go back to being able to get approved time off, I can cut that down to 3 days a week, and now I've got 4 days to work out. So that's a part of my strategic planning. Now, It's strategic questions that can help me get a broader spectrum of what. So, because my thinking is, well, gosh, I got, old assumptions. God, I hate going to the gym, but I'm gonna have to go to the gym. I got to do it. No, 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 no. There are other things that I can do to enlarge my options so that I can address the issues of my exercise, the excess weight. And so that's what I have to do. I have to look at different lifestyles in terms of eating, look at eating schedules, there are all kinds of things. Look at talking to God for divine wisdom. I actually did that before and got divine wisdom, got a divine strategy that helped me lose the extra weight. I've done it before. I can do it again. Okay. So number 2. So we've got spirit man. These are the 7 areas of development. Let's look at the first 3. Spirit man, mental development, and physical development. So my spiritual development is my interaction and relationship with God. My mental development is how am I going to expand my mental ability, what am I learning? What books am I reading? How am I growing? How are my business competencies enlarging and expanding? How are my communication skills developing? If I've been assigned a role as a supervisor or a manager or a leader, what am I doing to increase my potential and my effectiveness in those areas? All of those come under the guise of mental development. And then I've already touched on physical development. Then the next area is going to be my relationships, because everything in life, every joy and every joy and every sadness is tied to a relationship. So now I'm going to look at what do I need to do to increase my ability to be a more effective. If you're married, how can you be a better marriage partner? If you're in a business relationship, how can you increase your ability to work effectively with your partner so that you can generate revenue by creating synergy? All of those, okay? So we've got spiritual, mental, physical, relationships. Then we're looking at your career options. What are your career options? What are you doing? What choices are we making so that we can begin to increase our income? Okay. Then we've got the next one is financial goals. How much, if you're earning the same thing this year as you were this time last year, you're in the hole. If your income is not increasing at the rate of inflation, which should be somewhere around 4 to 6%, if your income isn't increasing at 4 to 6%, you're losing money every year. Your cash is shrinking. So thinking in terms as a financial goal, what are some things that I could do that can increase my income without having to clock in every day? Those are strategic questions that you can ask, okay? So, and then the last area there are several others, but I always like to add an adventure fun goal. Because if you're not doing something to create a sense of energy and excitement and fun and enthusiasm, but you want to do, then there's not a whole lot of joy in life going to work every day just to pay bills and pay the mortgage and pay the car note and blah, 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 blah. That ain't no fun in that. Ain't no fun in that. So you define what are some strategic goals and things that you can do that create a level of fun, excitement, energy. That can be your vacation time. That can be when my son was small, I would and do this with your kids. I would challenge him to learn one new skill a year. And the one year he took karate. Another year he played football. Another year he joined the band. And when he joined the band, he found something he could be passionate about. And from that point that he joined the band, he was in the band for 8 years, all from the 7th grade, all through high school till he graduated, 3 years in community college, and then also when he left community college, he went to the university because he had a band scholarship. So all of these are things that we do for mental development. That's a part of our mental goals list, okay? And you can also attach that to something fun. So now that we have this wheel, and if you look at it like a circle, and then you look at each one of those areas, those 7 areas, and you can intercept some more, but when you see those 7 areas on that goals list, now you can pick which one should be your priority. And so you ask, Lord, the 80-20 rule, which one of these areas could activate if I made a 20% increase in my focus on that area, which one of these areas could give me an 80% outcome of results so that those results can begin to spill over in the other areas? Because if I get the weight off, I have more energy. If I have more energy, I can do more. See, if I have more energy, if I get the weight off and I have more energy, then also at the same time, what happens when you exercise, the endorphins, the hormones, they start to activate your thinking. So your thought processes become clearer. Your energy level becomes higher. So look at the Pareto principle and then ask the Holy Spirit, as I am looking at these 7 areas of my life, which one of them can give me an 80% increase in results? If I focus on that and put a 20% increase in energy and time into that one area, it's going to create 80% results. And then it's going to increase my results by 80%. And then as I get that level of outcomes, it's going to influence other key areas of my life. Now, your responsibility is to find out which one is vital for you, because what's important for me is not going to be important for Keisha or Sharon or Wanda. It's not going to have the same level of priority for you as it would have for me. Okay? So the first thing we talked about was creating clarity with strategic questions. The second thing that we just talked about was identifying the areas and the goals and the categories that we need to pay attention to. Now, as we're looking at that, then the next thing I want to talk on, because we're talking about future casting 2019, how can I build on my options so that I can increase any area of productivity? Okay. Now, let's go ahead and start talking about that other thing. So we talked about clarifying purpose. Now let's talk about dream building. Okay, because I think this is really important. One of the most powerful strategic questions that I ask my students when they come into an academy program is, I will say, what is the greatest thing you can visualize God doing through your life? What is the biggest thing you can see him doing? So if you could see an image of God, what is the biggest thing you can see him doing? Now for me, I can see there are certain things that I can see that are huge, huge. I know at one point in my life, I remember I was performing in Rome, Italy, on the steps of the Vatican, singing a solo for Pope John Paul II. Now, that was years ago, and I had never in my life phantomed God doing something so huge through me. I was just astounded. Performing. In fact, I ended up that year performing for Pope John Paul II twice. That's not once, twice. Got to meet him twice. So that's huge for me. That was huge for me. And so what happens is, as we get older and we be mature, we stop dreaming. We stop imagining the big, broad, huge things that can come through us. Now, the power of answering that question, the power of that question coming to the forefront of your thoughts, your lives, is that if you will allow yourself to dream, then what I tell my students is the starting place of destiny is when you answer that question, that's where your destiny begins. Now, I'm going to give you an example of what it looks like to address that kind of a question. It's a strategic question. Now, again, here's the quote. If you can imagine something, that is, see it first inside your head, then seeing it becomes proof that you have all the needed potential for doing it, for being it, or for having it. The fact that you can see it is the starting point for bringing it to pass. Once you see something, all you have to do from that point on is create a plan of action to allow you to possess it. Okay? If you can see it, that means somewhere it already exists. Now, let's look at what happens when I take that understanding and then I use that understanding to enlarge my perspective of life, my perspective of what can come out of me. Now, I've got 3 students, okay? Got one student, and they're all in the 10th grade. And so I say to the first student, I said, so what are you gonna? So tell me what you want to do. So, I just want to graduate. I just want to graduate. And so the fact that they can see themselves to graduation, that's the starting point where their destiny starts. Now they may graduate, but then when they get to the graduation, now they've got to ask another question. Well, what do I do now? Where do I go from here? Okay. So this student number 2, same 10th grader. I asked that second 10th grader. I said, so what do you want to see happen in your life? Well, I'm really excited about going to college, because when I go to college, I just want to get my degree, and I'd love to be a scientist one day. That would be really cool. Okay, great. That's good. That's good. Okay. Talking about what you can see. What you can see is the starting point of destiny. So that student arrives at graduation. They graduate from high school, then they go on to college, they get in, and so now they're activating their educational opportunities, and they graduate from college. But again, after they graduate, now they got to stop and ask again, well, what am I going to do next? And so I asked student number 3, so tell me about what you see for your future. Well, I hear student number 3 say, well, you know what? My brother died from HIV, and it just devastated my family. And I remember standing in a hospital room thinking, it would be great if I could become a scientist who studied the HIV virus and found a way to control that virus's mutations and stop the mutations from changing and shifting. If I can find a way to stop that mutation to stop that virus from mutating, then I can come up with a cure for HIV. Now, which one of them has a lifelong mission? See, student number 3, the fact that they could see themselves, they saw a problem that was attached to their life, and they had the question, if I can find a way to stop that virus from mutating, then I could. That's where you step out of yourself. You look over into your life, and then you start to ask, what did God see when he looked at me? So now that third child is automatically going to graduate from high school. They're automatically going to graduate from college. They're automatically going to become a research scientist. The question for them, which is where their destiny starts, is how long is it going to take for them to discover a way to stop the virus from mutating? Literally every innovation, every creativity, every invention, every unique idea, every cure for every sickness follow that progression. That's how things come from the spirit realm into the natural. So it goes beyond just setting a goal. Oh, I want to graduate from college. Okay, that's good. It goes beyond, I just want to graduate from high school. Okay, that's good too. And yes, you should do those. But when you look at your life, what is the greatest thing you can visualize God doing through you? What do you see? When God looks down into your life, when he said, Jeremiah 29:11, he says, for I know the thoughts that I think towards you, says God, thoughts to give you a hope and a future, to bless you, to prosper you, not to harm you. So when he dropped that seed of an idea into your spirit that you won't even say to people, you won't even say it out loud because it's so big, it's so huge, it scares you. That's probably the one that God wants you to focus on. That's probably the one that he wants you to pay attention to. Because if you will pay attention to it and lean into it and pray into it, now you begin to cultivate the necessary wisdom to access the pathway you need to take to achieve it. Joseph had no idea that on the way to manifesting the dream that God had put in his sleep, when he closed his eyes and put his head on the pillow, and he dreamed, and he saw his brothers bowing to him, and he saw his mother, and in his dream he saw the sheaves bowing to him. He knew there was something greater for his life, but he didn't know how. But he knew it was there. That was the snapshot. What's yours? What's yours? I know mine. What's yours? What is the greatest thing you can visualize God accomplishing through your life? Now, when you arrive at the answer to that question, that is where your destiny begins. That's where it starts. That's where it starts. Now, The next thing I want to talk about is strategy, because this is where we start to miss it. This is where we start to go, oh, well, that's a great idea, but I have no idea where to begin, okay? Whenever God introduces you or gets ready to bring you into a new season, he begins to open up options. He brings you to a new year. A new year is a new season. Every year you get a new season. You get a fresh start. You get an open door, open opportunities. Every year you get to start all over again, okay? So when God brings you to that starting point, whenever he does that, he's going to typically do three things, okay? The first thing he's going to do is he's going to introduce into your life new information. That information is going to challenge your current assumptions. It's going to challenge your current negative thinking. It's going to challenge your old belief systems. That thinking is going to challenge you, and it's going to make you think there has got to be more than this. There's got to be a better way. There's got to be another way to get this done. That information is going to challenge you, okay? And then once you get that challenge of the information, then the next thing God is doing, he's going to introduce new information, because we're talking about how to start activating strategy. So once you get that new information, you can start looking. God is getting ready to bring new voices into your life, okay? So that new voice, for many people, I'm a new voice. Many people, well, who is she? I've never heard of her. Girl, I've been here, but I'm a new voice. It's like now God is allowing me to come on the scene. People have never heard of me. I had no idea that a video I shot in 30, that my friend took my little flip, we went to an event, took this little flip camera, my girlfriend took it. I had just bought this little camera about 7 years ago, and we took this little camera, and I went to a friend of mine's church in Alabama, and he asked me to do my testimony, and I did my testimony. I had no idea that 7 years later, that little 30-minute video would have going on 300,000 views. I mean, it's just a little 30-minute video of a testimony at church. I mean, I thought, I listened. I can't even, you guys, honestly, I don't even like to listen to it because I sound so country, and I know I'm country, so why am I tripping, right? That was a starting place. I was a new voice. So new information, the new voice. So now that new voice is going to reinforce the information that you've heard. So now you're going to go ahead and record that new information. You're going to start paying attention to that new voice, because the next thing that's going to happen is God is going to introduce to you new strategic alliances. Now, these are things that you can't necessarily control, but they happen. And the reason most people miss it is because they're not looking for what you expect you encounter. If you're not expecting new information, if you're not expecting new voices to give you direction, if you're not expecting new strategic alliances, you're not going to recognize them when they arrive. So now that you know God is giving you new information to challenge the way you think, God is opening doors for you, and he's presenting new voices so that these are people who can feed you information and help help steer you in a direction. But then the next thing that has to happen is you need the new strategic alliances. That means you got to get out of your present circle. You've got to set one of your goals. So a lot of times we're thinking, oh, I need to take XYZ class. I need to do this. I need to do that. No, sometimes you just need to go to a mixer, which you in the back of your mind, you've been hearing the voice of God say to you, you need to go to that entrepreneur's mixer. They've been having that mixer for the last year, and people have been inviting you to come, and you hadn't been yet. That's a voice. That's God giving you instructions that can help you get ready for the thing that's coming down the road. So now, new information, new voices, new strategic alliances. Now, why are the strategic alliances so vital? Because in order for you to get to the next thing, in order for you to get to the thing that can help you advance towards the dream, in order for you to get to the thing that can help you develop a strategy of what action steps you need to take, in order for you to get there, you have to know new people, right, Kissy? You have to know new people. You have to connect with people, because the people that you already know got you where you are. If they could take you to the next level, you would already be there. But the fact that you're not there, the fact that you have not arrived, indicates that there are people you need to know who you haven't met yet. So now you need to get into your space, new strategic alliances, so that these people, they know how to navigate the new realm. They know how to navigate the new area. So just like when Joseph got into Potiphar's house, Joseph thought he was in Potiphar's house helping Potiphar order his house. No, he was in Potiphar's house because he was learning the processes, the procedures, the plans, the strategies, how to operate in the Egyptian realm. He wasn't in Potiphar's house just to take care of doing a job. He was in Potiphar's house getting inside intelligence on how to navigate in Pharaoh's court. That's why he was in Potiphar's house. That's why he was in Potiphar's house. That's why he was in prison. That's why he was in a leadership prison in prison. So that everything we do equips, thank you, whoever that is, thank you so much for helping me out, because I know I'm teaching better than y'all responding, but that's okay, because I know this is so good. You listening so hard, you don't want to miss something. I know, because I'm blessing my own self, okay? So now, those new strategic alliances will help you navigate in the new realm. So now, let's look at an example. So if your goal is to buy a home, for example, in 2019, then you need to connect with people who already own houses so that they can let you know there's a first-time home. Well, you need to take a first-time home buyers class, and then you need to find out if your state has a homeowners corporation. Oh, and by the way, the Mississippi Home Corporation will make your down payments for you. If you just take this class, you'll qualify. They'll give you a certificate. It's good for up to $75,000 towards your down payment on your house. But people who live in apartments won't know that. They ain't gonna know, because if they knew it, they wouldn't be in an apartment. Just say it. So now, that three-step process. So far we've covered understanding the power of strategic questions. Then we looked at the 7 categories of goals and finding a strategy to identify which goals or which ones you should be focused on. Then we went from that to understanding how we have to set, how it is our vision of our possibilities. It's not enough just to set a goal, but you have to expand our options and dream so that we can see how much can come out of my life. If I see my life not from this perspective, but if I rise up and look into my life as if I'm seated in heavenly places with Christ, now I can look down into my life and see my potential. I can see that I am so much bigger than Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I'm actually there. I mean, just think about it. Right now, I'm talking to people in Los Angeles, in South Africa, in London. I am reaching and connecting with people literally all over the world. But when God said to me, he says, you will go all over the world. My thought was limited in that, well, I'm not going. I'm not manifesting that because I'm not going anywhere. I'm not using my passport. I'm not on the plane. I mean, I'm going to Pittsburgh and I'm doing that. But, one day it's like, duh. Okay? That by rising up and looking over into my life, I see my expansive potential. And last but not least, in order for me to start developing strategies, I need the new voices. I need the new information, and I need new strategic alliances. So now, when I start my actual planning and start writing down the things that I'd like to accomplish, my list is going to be so much bigger than it would be if I had just said, I need to convert that property at XYZ so that I can increase my income by another $750 to $1,000 a month. Passive income. I need to finish the conversion, blah, 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 blah. That's so little. That's so little, because I'm just looking at, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I need a pathway to $7,000 to $10,000 cash flow each month. That's what I'm thinking my financial comfort level is, okay? That's what I want. That's my desire. I am not there. I'm working my way. That's where I need to be. But to do that, I've got to possess some things. So now you see, now the last thing I want to touch on, I'm almost out of time, is building consistency. Now what I will probably do is I'm going to end this segment at 1 hour, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do the last 2 things. We're going to talk about mapping strategy, building consistency, So those are two really important pieces, because without them, we can dream all day long, but until you map something out and you become consistent in the product in producing results, nothing's going to happen. So I want to say thank you guys for connecting with this first segment. Now I'm going to come right back and do those last two pieces. I should probably have broke this first part. I may divide it when I post it, but anyway. And until I come back, so hopefully you guys will log back in and get the conclusion of January and November 2019 future casting. Come back for the conclusion, okay? And until then, you make it a terrific day. Bye-bye.